Hi, my name is Matt and I recently purchased an Oculus Quest 2 in 2022 and I thought I'd make a quick video review to help you decide whether or not it's still worth buying. I think the short answer to whether or not an Oculus Quest 2 is still worth buying is yes. This is a really fun and immersive experience, and coming in at about £300, I think it sets the benchmark for accessible and fun virtual reality. So for me personally, the Oculus Quest 2 was my first time ever using a VR headset, and before using it I was a little bit skeptical as to whether or not I thought VR would be cool. But now that I have used it quite a lot, I'm definitely more certain that VR is going to be one of the next big things that many companies are going to be investing a lot of money into. I thought that I'd get my complaints for the Oculus Quest 2 out of the way, and then we can sort of get on with a fairly positive review. So I only really have one sort of serious complaint and then one minor complaint. My biggest complaint about the Meta Quest 2 is the fact that you've got to connect it with a Facebook account, and this makes me feel a little bit uneasy. Facebook are notoriously bad with your personal data, and they've given us no reason to suggest that they're going to be any better with your data now. So really, I just don't like the fact that we have to connect it with a personal Facebook account. However, I do have a Facebook and it didn't prevent me from buying it or anything like that. It just makes me think I don't like Facebook. My second complaint is battery life. So if you're playing a really good game and you're really getting into it, you can find that the battery life just disappears and it really doesn't last too long. So I find for me that I can play about 2 hours of an intensive game before the Oculus Quest starts running out of battery, and it's not really too quick to charge either. This problem isn't really the biggest problem, as you can get a power bank. You could just whack a power bank in your pocket and charge it up whilst using it, or I think they even sell a power bank accessory. However, this does require buying more hardware, so for me, I'm not too keen on that idea. Okay, so now I've got my two complaints out of the way, let's get on to the good stuff. So starting with fit and comfort. I find that the Oculus Quest 2 is actually quite comfortable on my head. It took me a while to set up perfectly, and I really would recommend spending some time to make sure that you get the right fit for you. There's a strap on the top and on the back, so you've got plenty of flexibility, and this will definitely fit a child or an adult, no problem at all. The headset comes in at about 500 grams. Whilst this isn't too heavy, you definitely will start to notice it after a couple hours of gameplay. I personally found that, probably just due to my bad posture, after a few hours of gameplay I did start getting a bit of neck strain, but that's just personal, not everyone will notice that. The controllers are decent quality. Whilst they are fairly light in the hands, they feel relatively sturdy and are comfortable to hold. You'd be surprised how quickly you pick up the controls and the amount of things you can do with your new virtual hand. Another plus side to the design is that it's just really portable, so there's no cables and you don't need to hook it up to a PC. So it's really easy to just slip into a backpack and take around with you and take to a friend's house or whatever for them to try it out. And I recently did take this to my friend's house and they're completely blown away. Anytime someone first experiences VR, they're completely blown away and just excited by it. So let's move on to the virtual experience. I'm now going to show you and discuss what it's like to use, but I must say that it's impossible to do this thing justice unless you're using it yourself in VR. Just watching what I am seeing on YouTube will be nowhere near as cool as experiencing this for yourself. When you first put the headset on, you are transported into your virtual lobby. This can be changed, but for me, I've gone with the luxury villa. Even the virtual lobby alone is quite surreal, because you get used to being able to look around at this digital world and immediately you feel fairly immersed. You can access the menu through the 9 squares at the bottom, and you can see all of the apps and games that you have downloaded. Like all consoles, the games are an additional cost. There are a few free games, but to really get the best experience you're going to have to buy new games. Do keep this in mind, if you literally have a £300 budget, you probably won't get the most out of this. The games range from prices of £8 up to £30 at the higher end. Ultimately, I do think the games are a reasonable price for the experience that you will get. Also, Oculus does have a reasonable refund policy, so if you get a game and decide that you hate it within 2 hours of gameplay, you can refund it with no questions asked, and I have actually returned a few games that give me motion sickness. If you do go ahead and buy an Oculus Quest, the first game that you should try is First Steps. This game gets you comfortable in your virtual world and develops your confidence with your new hands. This is actually quite a fun game itself, and you can do some shooting and dance with a robot. So this is a free game, and whilst you may not use it for too many hours, every time you get someone new to try VR, I personally make sure that they go through this game first because it's such a cool entry point into virtual reality. My personal favourite game that I play is Beat Saber. This is quite an active game where you're just hitting blocks with a lightsaber. It's really fun and I can spend hours getting into it and gradually increasing the difficulty. There really aren't many games that you can play that keep you active, and with Beat Saber you really do get quite the sweat whilst playing it, so I do highly recommend this game. Unfortunately, during a game like Beat Saber where high frame rates are appreciated, you do notice that sometimes the Quest 2 will drop some frames and lag. This is more likely to happen when you've got something going on in the background or you're streaming to a phone or a TV. So the Quest 2 is essentially powered by a phone processor, so that sometimes the limitations of this processor are evident and frames will be dropped. I do find it quite disruptive to the gaming experience, but it isn't very common. One of my favourite uses for the Quest 2 is playing games with friends and making it a social experience. You can create an avatar and you can log into certain games with friends and visit virtual casinos, which is bizarrely fun, and speak to random people that you meet along the way. Or you can play table tennis with friends or virtual golf. This quickly becomes quite a fun way to stay connected with friends who you can't see face to face as regularly. You can also use the headset basically as a huge TV, which is weird. So I do sometimes use the headset for browsing the internet or watching YouTube videos, and essentially it just looks like you're sat in front of a gigantic television. So I am slightly cautious about VR motion sickness. Whilst this isn't something that everyone's going to experience, if you are prone to motion sickness, then perhaps this actually isn't worth you buying, especially if you're very prone to motion sickness. For myself, I do get motion sickness quite badly, and I have found sort of a workaround. I play games where your character is stationary, and that sort of reduces the likelihood of me feeling sick. So I'll play things like Beat Saber, table tennis, and going around the casino, and stuff like that doesn't really induce any sort of motion sickness for me. However, other games, especially Population 1 where you're like flying about the map, honestly, I feel like I could vomit after playing that. If you do feel a little bit sick after playing the VR headset, I think the best way to also get around this is by gradually increasing the time that you play. So for the first few days, just play for 10 minutes at a time, take it off, sort of ground yourself in your environment, put it on, play for 10 minutes, and eventually you will start to notice that the motion sickness just kind of fades away. So, the big question, should you buy? Yeah, I think so. If you're curious about the Oculus Quest 2 and the VR experience, then I think you'll really enjoy it, and I don't think you'll regret it. As long as you're not someone who's super susceptible to motion sickness, then I think this will be quite a lot of fun. Do bear in mind that the £300 cost is without any games, and you are going to have to spend a little bit extra on games. The Quest 2 is such an awesome entertainment device, and if you ever have friends round or family over, it can keep everyone entertained and they'll all really enjoy it. And because VR isn't super commonplace yet, it's got that novelty factor. So when I have people over, it's kind of like they're queuing up to play on it and just sort of experience VR. And everyone is always very impressed by it. Ultimately, the Quest 2 has left me really excited for the future of VR and kind of what's in store next. Hopefully the graphics improve, the headset gets a little bit lighter and sleeker. I just think that VR has got such a cool future. For me, what made me think that this is really a cool purchase was when my dad said that it was worth the money. So I mentioned it to my dad that I was going to spend 300 quid on some VR headset, and he was super skeptical. And then I took it over to my family house, and He spent an entire evening playing the Quest 2. He probably enjoyed it more than me, and he was just blown away by how exciting it was. And he himself was like, wow, I think I want to buy one of these. So no matter who you're really showing this to, even if there's someone as skeptical as my dad, I think the actual user experience will kind of change their minds and they'll immediately become fairly impressed with it. As I mentioned in the beginning of the video, I think the biggest downside is the fact that you've got to connect it to a Facebook account, but it's not a massive deal breaker. So yeah, I hope this video was informative. If you do decide to go ahead and buy a Quest 2, let me know what games you've bought, and I hope you don't regret your decision. Thank you very much for watching. Bye bye.